my name is Denise Yezbak Moore, and today I'm going to show you how to create this herringbone pattern bohemian bracelet. The tools and supplies you will need to create this bracelet are round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, wire cutters. I purchased all of these beads at a local beads show, so I don't have a source for them, but you will need a connector. This one is a mother of pearl connector. You will need 8mm stone beads. These are imperial jasper. Wood rondelles, we will be using 4 of those. An 8mm jump ring, a 5mm jump ring, a lobster clasp, 7-ply wax linen cording or the cording of your choice. As long as the beads will fit through the cord, you can use any cording. You will also need a macrame board. This is a mini macrame board. You can find it on Amazon, or you could use a basic clipboard with a document clip at the bottom. We are going to start out by cutting 2 41.5-inch lengths of 7-ply wax linen cording. We're going to bring the cords together and we're going to find the middle of the cording. And I'm just kind of pushing it together because we're going to grab our connector. This connector, I'm going through the center. If you have a regular connector, you'd want to do this step on your loop. So we're just passing it through, and we are going to create a lark's head knot. So we have the loop right here. We're going to pass all of our cords through, and we are going to pull the cords down. Pushing them down. That little connector spot is a little tight, so I'm just pulling it down. And we have formed a lark's head knot. We are now going to attach this to our macrame board. Now there's no strands coming out the top. So what I did is I got 2 pins and I used my wire cutters and I trimmed the end so that I could secure this connector to the board. Now we're coming in, we're finding the 2 center strands. We're going to leave those strands alone. We're going to put the other strands on each side, and we are going to string 13 8mm beads on each side of the center strands. So I've just strung 13 8mm beads on each of the center cords. The finished size of this bracelet is 6 1/4. So if you wanted a little bigger, add a couple of beads. If you wanted a little smaller, subtract a couple of beads. We're going to come down to the bottom of the bead board and we're going to secure the strands. That's why I love this type of bead board. We are now going to take the right side cord. We're going to bring it up and have it laid that way. And we are going to grab the left side cord and we're going to bring it through and have it lay that way. Let's kind of move our beads up so that they are staggered. These will move, we'll have to adjust them, but this just kind of gives us an idea of where we're going to be wrapping the cording around. So I'm just kind of moving them up. We're now taking the right side and we're going to pass it underneath. And we are going to bring that cord down and we're going to pass it underneath. We want to make sure that it pulls it nice and tight right there. And then we're going to bring that one up and that one up. And we're just going to come around, pass it underneath, and we're going to bring it up. And pull that cord nice and tight. We're going to squish these beads up a little bit. And we are going to pull it. Starting is the hardest part. So there you can see our little zigzag is starting to form. So now we're going to pass it between these two beads. So we're going to come up, pull it tight, and we're going to squish those beads up, bring this other bead up, this bead up, pass it underneath, going at a diagonal that way. Pull it tight, bring the next two beads up, and let's squish these up a little bit so they're nice and tight. We're going to grab the other side, pass it underneath, push the other two beads up. We want to make sure that that's nice and tight. Pass it underneath. Pulling it nice and tight. And you can see that our zigzag is forming. So we are going to move our next two beads up. We pulled the previous bead nice and tight. Pass it underneath. Pull it tight and then pull it down so the next bead can come up and this bead can come up, and we're squishing them together. And we are going to pass it underneath. Pulling it nice and tight. Bring the next bead up. And then this bead. We're going to pull that tight. And then we're going to bring it underneath. And then we're going to push this bead up and that bead up. And then we're going to pull it tight. Pass it underneath. And we're pulling it and we're bringing this bead up and the next bead up, holding the beads to stabilize with your fingers. Pull it tight. Let's bring our next bead up. And we are going to pass the cording underneath. Pulling it tight, sliding these beads right up against it. Pulling it down. Then we're going to go underneath. Bring our next 2 beads up. We're pulling it nice and tight. And then our last bead, we're just going to pass it around the one side. Pull that tight. Let's make sure they're nice and squished. And we're just going to bring that side around, and you can either tie it off at the end or you can connect it to this side. So now we're going to go to the left side. So we're going to pass this one underneath and kind of bring it around so that it comes this way. And then this side for me is much easier because it was easier to secure. The beads are already secure. So you're just going to pull that tight. And we're doing that in between every bead, going down, pulling it tight, coming back through. And I like to pull it up and then come down so it's nice and tight. So underneath, pulling it tight, coming down. Underneath, pulling it up and coming down. So we're putting it there, going underneath, pulling it up, then bringing it down. Coming underneath, pulling it up, then bringing it down. Underneath, pulling it up, bringing it down. Underneath, pulling it up, then moving the cording down. Underneath, pulling it up, moving the cording down. Underneath, pulling it up, moving it down. Underneath, pulling it up, moving the cording down, and then we'll just move that one to the side. So now we're going to remove our bracelet, and I'm grabbing these ends. From the bead board. And this is what our bracelet looks like. We're going to move this little cord right here to the back so it looks like that. So we want it tucked in there. Then I'm going to trim off this little end. And I just picked up my 8mm jump ring, and the jump ring's not closed. We always want to make sure that jump ring is nice and tight. This is how you open and close a jump ring. So I just closed that jump ring. So let's pick the bracelet back up, making sure that one end is tucked in there. We're going to come back over And we are going to string our jump ring down. It's nice and tight in there. And we're going to form an overhand knot. And we are just going to move this knot down very carefully. I want that little strand right in the middle of those beads. So we're moving it down, and we're going to separate those strands, and we're going to pull them nice and tight. So there, that strand went in there. This strand is on the other side. We're going to separate these little strands, and we're going to make these little dangles. I'll show you how to make one, and then I'll finish all of them off camera to save time. So we're just going to form an overhand knot, and I'm moving that knot down. Then I'm coming over and I'm making a little needle. We're just going to grab one of our rondelles, and we're going to string that little rondelle down, and we're going to form an overhand knot, and I'm just moving that knot down, and then we're going to come in trim that little end, and we're going to grab our round nose pliers, and we're going to fray that end so it gives it a finished look. So I just finished off all of those ends. They're all frayed. You could also, if you don't like these little dangles, you could trim the knot and dab it with GS Hypo Cement or super glue to secure the knot. Our last step is to attach our clasp. This is how you open and close the jump ring. I'm using a 5mm jump ring. I'm just going to open it, come over, attach. I'm going to grab my lobster clasp, come back in, and we are going to close the jump ring. And there you have it, how to create my herringbone bracelet. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to scroll down and check out a couple more of my videos. I try to post one each week. You can also find more DIY tutorials on Howcraft USA. And follow me on Instagram at Denise Yezbak Moore. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time.